On this episode, I poke epoxy, I vigorously shake a bottle, and I flatten some pine cones. How's it, and welcome back to my channel. I'm Greg, and in this video I combined pine cones that were donated by some friends and epoxy to build a unique Lazy Susan. In a previous video, I mentioned not posting new videos due to people rationing their savings, but this isn't the case as I've just been too busy with other projects to get around to the editing portion. So please bear with me, I promise I'm not hiding in my house.
We know you're in there, man! Stop playing with our emotions!
For this experiment, I decided to use a shallow pour epoxy not only because that's what I had laying around, but to offer helpful tips for doing multiple pours to keep the color consistent. To give a little something something, I added some pine needles in the mix, and to complement all the browns, I used a sapphire pigment, which is a deep metallic blue from AMT Composites. For this specific epoxy, I can only pour to a maximum thickness of 10 mm, which means I'll have to divide this project into 3 or 4 pours. If you are pouring clear, that's great, but if you're using color pigment, you can do one of two things to get a consistent color throughout. You can either measure the exact same amount of epoxy and pigment for each pour, or what I did was mix enough pigment into all of part A of the epoxy, and using a clear container I measured half the total thickness to see if it is opaque enough for the pine needles to show slightly. The reason why I only measured half the total thickness is because it will be diluted further by part B. Full disclosure, when using metallic colors you'll still see the layers from the sides, but it doesn't happen when you're using solid inks or dyes. If temperatures are high, it's a good idea to at least have a fan blowing directly onto the epoxy. Just remember to shake up the pigments in part A before mixing for each consecutive pour. Remember to keep your fan on the epoxy for most of the curing phase. And if you're wondering, won't a fan blow dust into the epoxy? Probably, but I'll be removing the top layer by flattening it with my router sled, which has also been collecting dust.
Hello, old friend.
Once the flattening process was complete, I removed the router lines with a belt sander using 80 grit and did a 1/4 inch round over before using another 80 grit on my random orbital only to remove the belt sander marks. I then mixed up a clear coat of epoxy to bring out the colors and to fill several holes that were caused by trap bubbles by the pine cones. I think this is better than using an oil finish because the epoxy bonds perfectly with the scuffed surface. And once it's all spread, just hit it with a blowtorch to remove any air bubbles. I ended up scraping most of the epoxy off to leave a rough surface so things don't just go flying off when it spins. I'm sure someone has a gambling uncle in the family that can't resist a roulette wheel. For the base, I previously used short pieces of pallet wood, which was a little bit unstable.
We need something robust.
So I cut longer lengths of the 76 by 50 mm pine to avoid it tipping when packed with heavier items. After cutting out the half flaps, I got ahead of myself and accidentally glued the base before putting the chamfers on the ends, which just made it more difficult to do.
Man.
I had to clamp and steady the base, and after a quick sanding with the random orbital up to 120 grit, I applied a coat of Rubio monocoat on the top and immediately attached the Lazy Susan mechanism so the oil can harden with it in place. While this was curing, it gave me some time to think how I was going to attach the mechanism to the epoxy.
I'm thinking,
It's not happening with him.
So after an unsuccessful think session, I referred to Google and YouTube and came to the decision to epoxy bolts into the top and use flat nuts to keep it secured. Details on this Lazy Susan can be found on my website in the description, and I just want to say thank you for staying tuned. Until next time, take care.